prayer to be able to share what I did. Wednesday, last 2 weeks I did this. Can God use you for our Layman's Day? So when I was writing the scriptures and writing the sermon or whatever, I asked God, I said, what shall I do for this? When Sharon called me, she said, can you speak for this, the fourth Sunday? And I said, no. And I told her, no. She said, but then I'll think about it. But then after I hung the phone up, the Spirit stayed on me so hard. So I said, okay, Sharon, Charlene, I'm going to do this. Now, what do I need to speak about? And I was like, she told you just say whatever. I said, whatever. I prayed about it, so the Spirit just told me to do the same thing I did on Layman's Night, which was the book of Ephesians. And it come from 2:10, which the little boy read, about we being workmanship created by God. But when I started reading, when I read that scripture, I had to get a little bit more than what was said there. So I went and I read the whole book of Ephesians so I can know what I was supposed to be applying to my life so I can be able to share with other people. So I broke it down. When the Ephesians was written by Paul, he addressed the letter to a group of believers who are rich beyond the measures in Jesus Christ, but living as beggars because of their ignorance of their wealth. And we all are ignorant until we grow up and learn better. The word ignorant doesn't mean that you are stupid. It just means that we don't understand until we grow up and spiritually. I had to grow out of my ignorance as a child in the church of I was a member of St. John Missionary Baptist Church with the pastor Reverend Dupree. But the word wealth in the book of Ephesians, it means the word wealth. The meaning of the word wealth is abundance of valuable possessions of money. In order for us to receive the wealth that God has for us, we have to work and have the faith in God. Paul also wrote about the Christian banking accounts. And this banking account is not a banking account with money in it. It's a banking account with possessions. And it is adoption, acceptance, redemption, forgiveness, wisdom, and inheritance of the seal of the Holy Spirit, the life and grace and citizenship. In short meanings, spiritual blessings. We have to obey God's words and do his will. Paul also wrote about the Christians had to learn a spiritual walk rooted in the spiritual wealth. For we are all workmanship created by Jesus. And God didn't dress us up just to go to church to look good. We are to work while we are dressed up in the spotlight so that we can bring others to Christ. We have to have the spirit that God gave us inside of us, and others will pick up on your sweet spirit if you're doing God's will, because they are watching us. And this letter that Paul wrote, he circled the letter to all the churches in Asia. And Ephesians was wrote many years ago, but us as churches today, we still need to apply this in our everyday life because it was written to be helpful to us today. As a child, I always loved the church, and I wanted to be a part of everything in the church. I used to fight my parents about going to church. And I attended to St. John Missionary Baptist under Reverend Dupree, but he wouldn't let no one do nothing in the church unless you was baptized. So my parents made me and my siblings, we sat down on the front row of the church every Sunday morning until we got baptized. And they used to call the front row of the church the morning bench. So then one day I just stepped up, and I was 9 years old, and I got baptized, and I joined a choir. And I wanted to sing and lead songs. So my first song that I sung was This Little Light of Mine. So I was going to let it shine, not knowing that one day that my light will be shining. And I am truly blessed because God loved us so that he gave us our free will to do what's right. As a teenager, I attended many different churches, youth groups, Congress. We learned about the different religions, and we had lots of fun in spiritual events. We also learned that every church should believe in the same thing that's in the Bible. Although in my life I had many mentors, my parents, my grandparents, my neighbors, but the ones that loved me and God, they installed in me wisdom, knowledge, in the revelation of Jesus, and how to use the tools that God gave us when we are going through something, which is fasting, praying, and doing the will of God. I didn't understand what the older people used to say: love your neighbors, keep God first in everything we do. When someone hit you in one cheek, you turn the other cheek. But I was just telling them, they hit me in my cheek, I'm going to hit them back. And I didn't know because I was like ignorant to the fact until I got older. I never understood. The question is, can God use us? Yes, he can. As a teenager, I had several tragedies came into my life. I had to save a girl from getting hit by a car. And then the second time I saved a child from getting hit by a car in the street, I actually took that lick. And all I seen was the blue sky going up and the ground coming down, looked like Tweety Bird. They hit Tweety Birds and you see all the stars. But I made it through that. Our parents taught us about loving, caring, and sharing, and about God. We need to teach our children the same thing so that they can learn early in life how to receive this spiritual wealth. Because I wish I would have knew earlier when I was a child that it was so much blessings to be given unto us. Yes. But when we go, sometimes when you teach a child up in a way that they should go, you can bring them up in the church, they might go straight and they will come back. But sometimes God has to get our attention, and sometimes it might be in a bad way, sometimes it might be in a good way. But we all pray that it's in a good way. So we pray that God have grace and mercy over our children, because right now there's a lot going on with people kidnapping kids and taking trafficking, human trafficking, taking kids and selling them for prostitution, and so we just got to keep our kids up in prayer. Yes. When we start believing in God's words and doing his will, then God will give us that spiritual wealth. He always has been giving us spiritual blessings all the years of our lives. He wake us up every morning. He give us food every day, food on our tables, and many cars for all our lives. We have homes, clothes, money to pay our bills. Sometimes we don't have the money to pay our bills. We have to pray and ask God to, help us with that. And I had to learn too that if you want God to do something for you, and when it comes down to money, you need to tithe. So when you tithe, it comes back to you in a spiritual way. It don't always come back in money. It comes back in different ways. And in order to keep on getting those blessings with the money, we need to give 10%. And that's 10% off the top of every paycheck that you get every time you get a paycheck, every 2 weeks or however. You take 10% and you just put it in the church. You don't worry about where it's going. You just have to trust God that he would keep his promise, and he will. Because he has shown me so many times how he would keep his promise if you just do what he is expecting you to do. I don't proclaim to be perfect because I'm not perfect, but he did keep his promise many times in my life. I had an experience in my life where I lost my income for 3 years. When God was able, I was so blessed in those 3 years. I had a roof over my head. I had food on my table, I had cable, I had car to drive, I had it all. I struggled a little bit, but that struggle that I had, it taught me how to be much stronger in my life. And the 3 years that I lost my income, he was my doctor, he was my lawyer, because when I was able to, when 3 years when they took my income, I went down. I had the doctor, I had to have no insurance. So this doctor stepped in and she told me, she said, I know you're hurting and I know you need help and whatever. She said, but you just come to me. And that one day I was hurting so bad, I just prayed and I asked God, I said, I'm hurting so bad. I just need a doctor or somebody to help me with my back, because when I got hit by the car, you heard that one, but I got hit by a car when I was 17, and I've been experiencing problems ever since, so everything on my body is out of whack. But he still kept me going. Yeah. He gave me time to work, and I used to get up every morning and run and walk and, do all these things. And that hit that I took when I was 17, that was for saving a boy named Stacy Simmons out the road. I seen the car coming down the road with the dust flying, and I said, and he was out there in the middle of the road playing, and I ran to grab him, and when I grabbed him, the car, I took that lick, but God showed me that too. And so when I lost my income, I went through, I had clothes, people gave me clothes. You would have thought that they was tailor-made for me, because, he tell us to go on our journey without these things, because they'll be added unto you. When I was without the income, I was able to travel. I was traveling everywhere, all over. And people said, something wrong with this picture. You don't have a job, but you travel. And I said, well, that's the grace of God. I said, you give your 10% or whatever. He blesses you. He blesses with it back. And I didn't have no money when I left town to go out of town. But when I came back, I had plenty money. Plenty money. But, and I was like, well, I had enough to pay some bills with. But God has protected me in so many ways. He protected us from the KKKs when we was in high school. Because back in the day, when we was going to Dunedin High School, they changed the hours to 6 o'clock in the morning. And so every morning we had to get up, we had to group together, and we walked to the bus stop. But on this one particular morning, these men came up in a truck, white men, and they came up in the truck and they jumped out the truck and put on their hoodies, and thank God our mom always taught us how to scream and holler when something going on, because all the neighbors know they hear the voices, So we ran, and God protect us from that, because right now they got kids that's getting yanked up off the streets and getting taken, and sometimes they find them and sometimes they don't. And when they do find them dead. He protected me 3 times when I had surgery. I went down 3 times. I had 3 different surgeries, but I had to be off my work for at least 8 to 12 weeks. And when I went down then, I owned the house, and it was like, I don't know how I was going to pay my bills, or how I was going to do it, but I went into foreclosure 5 times, but it never happened. Because God always puts somebody in a place to help you go through whatever you're going through if you do it the right way. And then when I got behind with my bills, it's just like people just started, coming in and just, pitching in and bringing money and, bringing, take this, because I couldn't get up. They told me to stay in the bed for six weeks. So anyway, and he protected me from the police when I was coming up as a teenager. I remember when I was in Tampa one night, and I was coming out, it was late in the morning, and my daddy taught us never to stop if you by yourself. So I was by myself, and I was coming out of Tampa, and the police put the lights on me coming from Tampa. But I didn't stop. I drove real slow, and I kept going, and I kept going until I got to my dad and them house. By the time I got to my dad and them house, we had a convoy behind me because they called the other police in Clearwater because I didn't stop. Normally, if we do that nowadays, what happens? We get shot. You know, they got the guns and stuff put on, but I didn't get as much as a ticket. You know, they just said, well, next time, you know, I said they was looking for some other car. But I just did follow instructions what my dad said, and I started praying, and I drove all the way across the causeway, all the way through, going back through, and I had all these lights flashing. Everybody told me I looked like Christmas out there. And I was like, well, my daddy told me don't stop if you know if there was another one open. And they always taught us to always carry enough money that you can make a phone call. And back then, we didn't have cell phones and iPads and all this stuff to get in contact with people. We had to do phone booths. And now, you know, with the rotary dial. And back then, the phones was 10 cents. 10 cents a call. So that, you know, that helps us to really just pay, just obey, and that goes back in the book of Ephesians, because in the book of Ephesians, it talks about doing God's will. It really runs down the 10th commandment. And it tells you about how the husbands should love their wives, how the children should obey their parents, how the parents should not provoke their child, and on and on. But I also want to share with you all today, because in 2002, when God came to me to use me, I had no idea that I'd be doing all this stuff. But when he came to me in a dream, and it was in a dark, dark place. And when he called my name, he kept calling my name, and I was like, who is that calling my name? And he just kept calling, and then this big rock appeared, like they have in the Western days. And he just kept calling. So somebody behind that rock calling my name. And then a little dot appeared on the rock. And I'm saying, well, what in the world is going on? And he just kept calling my name, but it was a very pleasant voice. But then that little dot, it just started opening up and opening up and opening up until it got like a cave, looked like a cave, like a light coming out of a cave. And then Jesus came up to the front of that. I seen the shadow coming out, and he came into the front of that, and he said, I have something I want you to do. And I'm like, what is it? What is it? He said, it's not time yet, but when the time is right, the Holy Spirit would tell you. And then from that point on, I just kept living my life, and I went through a lot of struggles, but I always remember what my grandmother used to say, because I had, you know, the mentors that I had, they taught me wisdom and knowledge, you know, and stuff. So, and I always dealt with elderly people because they always would tell you something good, but we don't listen sometimes as children. So I had to, you know, thank God, because when they tell you something and you get in a rut, those little words will come back to you. What to do. When you get on your knees and pray and ask God. But in 2005, I was invited to say, came in and gave me a ticket to go to Pastor Paula White Church in Tampa. And she told me, she said, well, when you get there, all you have to do is just give them your ticket. But when Paula White was up there, she was preaching, and she was saying how God called you to be so sweet, and this and that, and she was swinging her arms. And she said, but when God called you, he said, you would know it. And at that point, I didn't know what was going on. But my son said, I just was all over the place. I was tearing up the place and stuff, and I didn't know. I said, well, why, if I was flipping and doing all this here, why I ain't hurting? You know, so the Spirit protect you when you're going through the Holy Spirit. And then from that point on, he said, feed my people. And I'm like, feed your people? I said, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? He said, go to the book of Matthew, and it'll tell you, explain to you, do the same thing Matthew was doing. And I said, I can't do this here. But he did show me some things that it was of him, because in the book of Matthew, it's the 10th chapter, 18 to 20 verse, it speaks that the Father is the Father that speaks through you. It's not us. We just flesh and blood. So we just speak whatever he has for us to speak. But anyways, anytime we're going through something, we need to give it to God. And anytime anything with your kids and stuff, give it to God. Because if anything we can't change, we need to just let it go and give it to God. But I was enjoying reading that book of Ephesians because it gave me a little more insight too, because I didn't know, I know the 10th commandment is in other parts of the Bible too, but I said, now I know it's in another part of the Bible. So this book of Ephesians, I suggest and recommend everybody read it and apply it to your life, and we apply it to all the churches, because God didn't just dress us up to come to church. He dressed us up to be able to bring somebody into the church. And if you got that, then once you accept him into your life, that spiritual blessings will start to come. You start getting the wealth. You start showing love. You learn how to forgive. You learn how to care. It's just there for you. So that's the end of my sermon. And I hope you all have a great day.